In exactly 15 days, Las Vegas is going to explode. T-Mobile Arena. International Fight Week. The biggest crowd in UFC history gearing up for the most anticipated comeback in combat sports. And at the center of it all, two men who first fought 13 years ago, back when one of them was a hungry kid nobody had heard of yet, and the other was already starting to become a legend. Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway. The rematch. UFC 329. July 11th, 2026. And right now, before a single punch has been thrown, the entire fighting world is weighing in. UFC fighters, legends, champions, training partners, rivals. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a prediction. And what they're saying is dividing the MMA community right down the middle. Some believe this is McGregor's greatest comeback story, waiting to be written. Others believe this could be the most brutal reality check a returning legend has ever walked into. So let's do this. Let's break down every major prediction, every voice that's spoken up, every angle that's been covered, and let's figure out exactly what this fight means, who really believes in who, and why the whole world is going to be watching on July 11th. But first, you need to understand what we're actually looking at here. Go back to August 2013, Boston, Massachusetts. UFC Fight Night. Not even a pay-per-view, a fight night card. Two featherweights on the preliminary card. Conor McGregor, a 25-year-old Irishman still trying to establish himself in the UFC, against a 21-year-old kid from Hawaii named Max Holloway. This was not yet the McGregor the world would come to know. He hadn't knocked out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds yet. He hadn't spoken with that electrifying accent in front of sold-out arenas. He was on his way up. And Holloway? Holloway was just a kid. 3 losses in his first 10 fights. Raw talent, but still rough around the edges. McGregor won by unanimous decision. And then they each went their separate ways. What happened next is one of the most remarkable parallel journeys in the history of the sport. McGregor became the biggest star the UFC had ever seen. He stopped Jose Aldo in 13 seconds. He made Eddie Alvarez look lost at Madison Square Garden to become a 2-weight world champion. He stepped into a boxing ring with Floyd Mayweather. He went to war with Khabib Nurmagomedov in one of the most electric nights the sport had ever produced. He was everywhere, on billboards, on chat shows, on magazine covers, on every screen you looked at. But then the losses came, back to back to back, to Dustin Poirier. And at UFC 264, in that third Poirier fight, his leg snapped in half near the end of the first round. Horrible to watch. And just like that, Conor McGregor, the biggest draw in combat sports, was gone. Not just from fighting, but from the public eye, in any meaningful way. 5 years. 5 years of waiting. Meanwhile, Max Holloway kept fighting. He racked up wins against some of the best fighters alive. He went to lightweight and knocked out Justin Gaethje in the final second of their fight at UFC 300 in one of the most dramatic moments in the sport's history, a moment that is still talked about everywhere you go. He won the BMF title. He lost it to Charles Oliveira at UFC 326 just earlier this year. And now he walks into UFC 329 as the man who is supposed to be the reality check for McGregor's comeback story. At welterweight, a weight class neither man has ever competed in before. That's the backdrop. That's the stage. Now, let's get into the predictions. Let's start with the man who is absolutely, unconditionally, 100% in McGregor's corner, Dillon Danis. Now, Danis is McGregor's longtime training partner. He was in Conor's corner at UFC 229 against Khabib. Yes, the same night the famous post-fight brawl broke out. He knows McGregor as well as almost anyone in the sport. He's been in the gym with him, seen him up close, trained alongside him. And what Danis is saying right now is going to make a lot of people roll their eyes and make a few people very nervous. Danis told MMA Fighting in no uncertain terms that McGregor is going to knock out Max Holloway. Not just beat him, knock him out. And he went further. He gave a round prediction. Danis says it doesn't go past 3 rounds. Maybe not even past 2. He said, he's always been a dedicated guy. Him not going to the White House card, he is living in the gym. He is bringing in tough training partners. He is beyond focused right now. It's a different kind of dedication that he has right now. And then Dennis said something that cuts right to the heart of the biggest debate around this fight. He said he doesn't believe in ring rust, that ring rust is a mindset. And he said if anybody can beat that mindset, it's Conor McGregor. Meanwhile, Max Holloway kept fighting. He racked up wins against some of the best fighters alive. He went to lightweight and knocked out Justin Gaethje in the final second of their fight at UFC 300 in one of the most dramatic moments in the sport's history, a moment that is still talked about everywhere you go. He won the BMF title. He lost it to Charles Oliveira at UFC 326 just earlier this year. And now he walks into UFC 329 as the man who is supposed to be the reality check for McGregor's comeback story. At welterweight, a weight class neither man has ever competed in before. That's the backdrop. That's the stage. Now, let's get into the predictions. Let's start with the man who is absolutely, unconditionally 100% in McGregor's corner, Dillon Danis. Now, Danis is McGregor's longtime training partner. He was in Conor's corner at UFC 229 against Khabib. Yes, the same night the famous post-fight brawl broke out. He knows McGregor as well as almost anyone in the sport. He's been in the gym with him, seen him up close, trained alongside him. And what Danis is saying right now is going to make a lot of people roll their eyes and make a few people very nervous. Danis told MMA Fighting in no uncertain terms that McGregor is going to knock out Max Holloway. Not just beat him, knock him out. And he went further. He gave a round prediction. Danis says it doesn't go past 3 rounds. Maybe not even past 2. He said, he's always been a dedicated guy. Him not going to the White House card. He is living in the gym. He is bringing in tough training partners. He is beyond focused right now. It's a different kind of dedication that he has right now. And then Danis said something that cuts right to the heart of the biggest debate around this fight. He said he doesn't believe in ring rust, that ring rust is a mindset. And he said if anybody can beat that mindset, it's Conor McGregor. Now, critics will point out that Danis is not exactly a neutral observer. Of course, he's predicting his friend and training partner to win. That's expected. But Danis has been in those training sessions. He has seen what Conor looks like on the mat, up close, at this stage of preparation. You don't completely dismiss that. Danis even went as far as to map out McGregor's next fight, predicting that after he knocks out Holloway, Conor will face Islam Makhachev, the pound-for-pound king of the sport. That's how confident he is. Now from the hyper-believer to the respectful skeptic, let's talk about Israel Adesanya. The last stylebender is one of the greatest strikers in UFC history. A former undisputed middleweight champion with one of the most sophisticated eyes for stand-up combat the sport has ever seen. When Adesanya talks about striking and stylistic matchups, people listen. And what Adesanya said about this fight was both complimentary to McGregor and quietly alarming at the same time. He told Demetrius Johnson's YouTube channel that McGregor did not pick an easy opponent for his comeback. He was very clear about that. He talked about Holloway's biggest strengths, the volume, the relentless pressure, the hands, the legs, always in your face, constantly working. He called Holloway a volume puncher who is just going to be in your face for the entire fight. And then Adesanya said it plainly, dealing with that for your first fight back is not easy. What's interesting about Adesanya's take is that he didn't come out and say McGregor loses. He acknowledged the difficulty. He acknowledged McGregor's fire. But there was a clear message underneath everything he said. This is a genuinely hard matchup for someone coming back after 5 years. Not a smart comeback fight by any analytical standard. Then there's Ian Machado Gary. And Ian Machado Gary's investment in this fight is deeply personal. Gary is Irish. He grew up watching McGregor. He has spoken openly about how McGregor inspired him to pursue a career in MMA. Conor McGregor is, in many ways, the reason Ian Machado Gary became Ian Machado Gary. And right now, Gary is on the verge of becoming the UFC welterweight champion himself. He faces Islam Makhachev at UFC 330 on August 15th. The timing of all this couldn't be more poetic. When Ariel Helwani asked Gary straight up if he thinks McGregor wins, he didn't hesitate. Not even a flicker of doubt. He said, absolutely. He talked about the weight class. He talked about how at 170 pounds, McGregor is going to have knockout power in a way that changes things. He talked about the hunger, the years of inactivity building up inside McGregor, the desperation to prove everyone wrong. And he said this fight is very, very interesting at welterweight. Gary is not a man throwing empty compliments. He trains at this weight class every single day. He knows what welterweight bodies look like, what welterweight power feels like. And he's saying McGregor has something real to bring to the table in this fight. Now let's talk about the co-main event fighter, who is also one of the loudest McGregor supporters on the entire card. Paddy Pimblett, the Scouser, the Batted, the guy who is one of the most entertaining, most polarizing fighters in the sport, and someone who wears his heart on his sleeve at all times. Paddy is fighting Benoit St. Denis in the co-main event of UFC 329. He's got his own massive fight to prepare for. And yet, every time someone sticks a microphone in his face, he has a lot to say about what's happening in the main event. Pimblett told TNT Sports flat out, he sees Conor knocking Max Holloway out, and he gave a specific reason why that matters. He said everyone is counting Conor out. Everyone thinks Max is going to win. But then he brought up something really interesting. He pointed out that Charles Oliveira made Max Holloway look small when they fought at lightweight. And he said, imagine how big Conor McGregor is going to look standing across from Max at welterweight. Think about what that means for a second. Holloway has spent his entire career at featherweight and occasionally at lightweight. He has never competed at welterweight. And the man standing across from him is going to be a naturally bigger person, coming in at a weight that gives him more of what he already has, power. Paddy also acknowledged the other side of it. He said if the fight goes to the later rounds, Max will probably start picking Conor apart. Max's cardio is legendary. His volume in rounds 4 and 5 is genuinely terrifying. Paddy is not blind to this, but he is making a calculated bet on the knockout power of McGregor landing first. Now, let's talk about the fighter who sees this fight with perhaps the clearest eyes of anyone who has actually shared a cage with both of these worlds, Michael Chandler. Now here is a man who has a very complicated relationship with this whole situation. Chandler was supposed to be McGregor's comeback fight. He coached opposite him on The Ultimate Fighter. He waited for that fight for 2 full years. He had a whole narrative built around it. And then McGregor pulled out with a toe injury, and eventually that fight just never happened. And Conor ended up going in a completely different direction, choosing Holloway instead. How does Chandler feel about all of this? He was gracious, genuinely gracious. He told MMA Junkie that as big as the McGregor fight was to him, he feels like he's a million miles away from it now. He said he wished Conor well. He said the sport is a better place when Conor McGregor is training and on his way back. But then Chandler said something that will haunt McGregor fans in the best possible way. He said, whether it happens in the UFC or not, he and Conor McGregor will compete against each other. Somewhere. Somehow. Some way. He said the story is already built. The animosity is already there. The mutual respect is already there. It's got all the makings of a blockbuster. What Chandler didn't say, but what was hanging in the air, is this. He'll be watching, cage side, interested in how it goes. If McGregor wins, the conversation about their eventual matchup is going to get very, very loud, very, very fast. And let's be honest about the betting picture, because it tells you something real about what the sport actually thinks, separate from the loyalty and the narratives. The bookmakers have Max Holloway as a significant favorite. He opened around -270, and that number has moved even further in his favor since then, some books now listing him as -450 in some places. McGregor is the underdog in his own comeback fight on International Fight Week at the biggest event of the year. That is remarkable when you think about it. There was a time when McGregor made odds irrelevant. There was a time when the whole world simply assumed Conor would win. That era is over. The market is telling us something clear. 5 years is a very long time. A broken leg and the surgeries that followed are real obstacles, and Max Holloway is one of the most relentlessly skilled fighters on the planet. But then, there are moments that can't be measured by odds. McGregor said it himself in a Paramount Plus interview. He looked directly at the camera and said, "You can call me Mystic Mac because I predict these things. I will just have to touch him, and after that it will be clinical." To win alone is not enough. It must be spectacular. He said he's going to son Max Holloway again. Those were his words. He called himself multiple levels above Holloway in skill, mentally and physically. Now, you can hear that as delusion, or you can hear that as the same voice that predicted 13 seconds against Jose Aldo. Here's what makes this fight so uniquely compelling. Both outcomes are meaningful. Both outcomes matter. If Max Holloway wins, and wins convincingly, it sends a clear message that 5 years is too long. That no matter how great you are, no matter how much you've built, the sport moves on without you. It says that Holloway's path, staying active, staying hungry, fighting the best, is rewarded over legacy and superstar appeal. It says reality wins. But if Conor McGregor walks into T-Mobile Arena on July 11th and finishes Max Holloway, if that left hand lands clean in the first or second round, and Holloway goes down, and the crowd of 20,000 people loses their mind, it becomes one of the single greatest comeback stories in combat sports history. It doesn't just validate McGregor. It shakes the entire sport to its foundation. It sends a message that some people are just built differently, that some people exist outside the rules. And who would be cage-side watching that moment? Michael Chandler, Ian Machado, Gary. The same men already calculating their next moves if the impossible becomes possible. Justin Gaethje, the current UFC lightweight champion, has also been mentioned in conversations about what happens after this fight. Israel Adesanya recently suggested that Gaethje should sit cage-side at UFC 329, ready for whoever comes out of the main event. The chess pieces are already being moved before the fight has even begun. This is the thing about Conor McGregor fights. The sport doesn't just watch them. The sport rearranges itself around them. July 11th, T-Mobile Arena, Las Vegas. International Fight Week. The night that 37-year-old Conor McGregor either writes the greatest comeback chapter in MMA history or learns once and for all what happens when the sport finally catches up to the myth. Every fighter has given their prediction. Every angle has been covered. The believers are loud. The skeptics are well-reasoned. The odds say one thing. The heart of every McGregor fan says something entirely different. Only one thing is certain. When that cage door closes in Las Vegas on July 11th, none of the predictions matter anymore. All that matters is what happens in those four walls. And the whole world is going to be watching.